Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining this session, the second session by NoseBeam series, giving some lights on the most hot topic health issues globally. And today's topic is COVID-19. And I'm Timo, hosting this show. And today with me is Dr. Tareq, and we are digging into the issue of COVID-19 and vaccines. Like everybody's talking about it, there are so many questions. Is this the silver bullet? So let's see what we can do. Dr. Tareq has 2 doctor's degrees. He's a pharmacist. He has been working also with MIT on discovering new world-class antibiotics. And this year, he has been consulting the government of 5th most populous country in the world, Pakistan. They have already 233 million people, how they can manage the public health in times of COVID-19. One of the measures is, of course, vaccines. And luckily, Dr. Tareq has done all the research on this, keeping up to date on a daily basis. And here is with us today to share his knowledge and expertise on the topic. So first question, to get it started, there are so many questions, but first is if we get this vaccine done, is this the silver bullet that solves all the issues related to COVID-19?
First of all, Timo, thank you very much for having me. And that's a really burning question right now at the moment, that is a COVID-19 vaccine can solve this problem. So with respect to the public health principles, we are hoping and we are assuming that it will going to solve our problem of COVID-19 vaccine, but we are not entirely sure that how effective it will going to be. We are hoping it will going to do good things. It will going to save us. But there are a lot of questions, and technically on ground, we don't have such a strong evidence to claim that if we have COVID-19 vaccine, COVID-19 virus will be eliminated or we will be totally immune to it. Right now, we don't have enough evidence. We are really hoping. And right now, the vaccination effort is going on in the world to actually prove this point. And frankly, we really want, or we really need it to happen, because without vaccine, things will be really, really hard, and COVID will going to stay for quite some time.
So, this also means that, even if we have vaccine, people should still practice good hygiene to wash their hands and the hygiene standards stay regardless if you have vaccine or not.
Very good point. So, globally, this is how things are done. So there are some non-pharmaceutical interventions, which means that, you are following the standard operating procedures, you are washing hands, you are maintaining the social distance, you're using your mask, and you're avoiding any crowd which have a COVID-19 trace or a history or a hotbed. So those non-pharmaceutical interventions, yes, you need to adopt. Now, when you come to the pharmaceutical interventions that include having any medicine, which can protect you from COVID-19. Right now, there is no really effective medicine which can protect us from COVID-19 or which can kill the virus. All the medicines we use right now, they are just the measures to control our symptoms and we can get better. So there is not a really right medicine out there for COVID-19. Vaccine is something we have more close solution in terms of pharmaceutical interventions, because hopefully once we have vaccine, our body will be immune to it, and then we can stay safe from the COVID-19 virus. But here's the problem. Naturally, those people who have been recovered from COVID, on average, it has been reported that the immunity do not last. It usually lasts from 4 to 6 months. It normally do not last more than 6 months, even when a person has been recovered from COVID-19 vaccine naturally. So there's a huge question that all those people who have been vaccinated, do they need to have a vaccination again after every 6 months? This is something we are looking forward to find out as more and more data emerges from the clinical trials.
And I understand there are many kind of parallel like vaccines currently being developed? Like, how many are there? Because like, I think when people have been following the media, they say like, well, there is one company doing this, then somebody like in the US or in Europe, in China, they are testing something. In Russia, there is something going on. So actually, how many kind of, let's say, vaccine candidates are we currently racing in order to solve this problem?
Wow. Okay. The sequence of the virus was published in January 2020. And after that, a massive global race started. Who will going to produce the vaccine first? The candidates have been reporting, but according to the WHO results, there are more than 100 candidates, and many of them are in the later stages of the vaccine trial. So what's happening right now, there are a lot of candidates, right? And some of the candidates are in the final stages. So there are, let's say there are almost 10 to 11 companies who are leading this race. And we have big names like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, some of the Chinese companies, CanSino Bio, Sinopharm, Russian company Sputnik. So these are Novavax from US, Moderna from US. So these are some leading companies who are leading this race, who are actually more close in having a much larger data set result for everyone, that this is the vaccine they prepared and they have tested on a couple of thousand of people. And as per the results, they are showing it to be more effective. So if I try to classify it right now, there are a few leaders in this whole race. Pfizer is leading it, definitely. Then probably we have seen in the news, Moderna is another one, which is also following up. AstraZeneca is also coming up close. Sputnik from Russia has also published some of their initial clinical phase trial 3 results. And then it is followed by Sinopharm from China and all that company. So there are 4 or 5 companies who are actually leading the race, who are like the front runners. Then there are almost 4 or 5 companies who are just behind them. And then there's a much more pool of the vaccines coming up. So this is what's happening. And interestingly, in the history of vaccinology, this has never happened, that there are hundreds and hundreds of candidates coming. And most importantly, the normal time duration to produce a vaccine from scratch to final product is usually a decade. And it's often more than a decade. And right now, this whole thing is happening in a span of 12 months.
Yeah,
so you can imagine how much it's squeezed, like in the history of pharmaceutical world, it's happening for the first time. So, yeah. It's interesting, it's exciting, but it's also scary.
But I mean, actually, I think it's very good comparison. Like, I mean, another big virus. I mean, we are not talking about antibiotics, but we are talking about viruses. I mean, there has been like HIV, and this has been like on for very many decades, and we still don't have vaccine for that. So, I mean, on that timeline, actually, what is the realistic time we can kind of, or people watching us today can estimate that they could use the vaccine like at their home, like wherever they are globally right now? That what do you think is the timeline when we are getting there based on the current race, let's say pit stop or mid-check results?
Very interesting question. Frankly, it depends on which part of the world you live in, number one. Number two, it depends whether the country in which you live in, has it produced its own vaccine, and is it near getting the regulatory approvals? So this is how the situation is right now. Pfizer is right now leading the race. Their product got emergency use authorization last Wednesday, and I don't remember last Wednesday, it would be probably first week of December in UK, and it's registered there, and now it's been given to the people, the general public. So Pfizer vaccination has started in UK. In US, it is estimated to be start probably after 15th of December once Pfizer will get emergency use authorization. So those people who are in US, where the vaccine has been approved and it's been given to the people, you can get the vaccine. Similarly, right now there are news that in Russia, Sputnik company, they have started to give the vaccines to the general public. Similarly, in UAE, Sinopharm, another company from China who's doing like quite some good work, it started to give vaccines there. So it depends on which part of the world you live in, number one. Number two, it depends how efficiently the government has already arranged the vaccination. And in this whole scenario right now, in terms of vaccine availability, very interesting thing happened, which we have never witnessed before. Before getting the regulatory approvals, up to 80% of the company's products have been booked by governments across the globe on advance payments. For example, let's assume any pharmaceutical company A has a product and they are in their clinical trials. They don't have a final results out. They definitely don't have a product approved, but a government has bought hundreds of millions of doses and the governments have did advance payment. So right now there are more than 150 countries in the world who have already pursued that stuff. They are dealing with different pharmaceutical companies and they have already booked vaccines on advance payment. So this has already created a global supply chain crisis even before the vaccine has come into the market. So right now, as I know, like working with the government and all that, if you go and if you try to negotiate vaccine supply for your country right now with any of those big names, they will give you a timeline of estimatedly after 6 to 9 months. You say, no, you need vaccine as soon as possible. They say, no, we have more than hundreds of countries lined up before you who have given us money and they have already booked the supply. So we will first give it to them. And once we are done with them, then we'll supply it to you. So depending upon which country you are, depending upon what your government has did, depending upon whether your country has its own vaccine manufacturing capability and site. So these things actually affect when you are going to get your vaccine. So it varies a lot depending upon your location.
But still, previously you said that usually takes quite a long time to get it done. And now I understand that the governments had already pre-booked, let's say 80% of the stock on non-approved vaccines and then authorizing them on let's say emergency protocol. Many people probably would kind of then get questions in their head like, hey, what's going on? Are they actually safe? Can people have some assuredness that even though, let's say, some might even say that there are vested interest because if you have paid 80% in advance for the product, you really want to make it work. How we can assure people that it's actually safe to get those shots in the countries where it is available already now or will be available in the coming weeks and months?
Very good question. First thing, yes, in a normal scenario, the vaccine development process takes generally like a decade, 12 years, 13 years. Right now, everything happened in the span of 12 months or in 18 months, like in most part of the world right now. So yes, the time has been squeezed a lot. Are there any safety concerns? Yes, there are concerns. Why? Because the normal clinical trial process, phase 3 clinical trial, which has which started in May, June, July for most of the vaccine manufacturers, and it's near the conclusion, or it's going toward a conclusion probably 1 or 2 months. Generally, this time duration of almost 7 to 8 months, which is happening right now, in a normal scenario, the same studies are conducted in a span of 5 to 6 years. So that gives quite a good margin to analyze way more safety data, to analyze efficacy in a more thorough way, which is not possible right now because of the emergency situation. So yes, there have been compromises made in terms of having a real quality data of different aspects out. Yes, there is a question about that.
But at the same time, it's at the same time, isn't that some people are also vaccinating for the seasonal flu and they have to get these shots every year. Maybe some people are thinking how COVID-19 vaccine is related to kind of that because that's basically, it seems to be a new every year as well. If that is developed a brand new every year, maybe then that's a similar protocol also for COVID-19 being also, the common cold can be also another, let's say, branch or family of coronaviruses as they are
Yes.
kind of relatives. Maybe they kind of behave in the same way as well.
Yes, yeah. But like, okay, let me just finish the answer for the first question when you asked the question about the safety of the vaccine. Yes, there are some concerns that the data is not complete to have a really thorough analysis or understanding of safety. Yes. But at the same time, the maximum possible effort in terms of keeping safety as a priority has been the focus of all those companies who are pursuing clinical trial. Why? Because let's assume if there is any death or anything in COVID-19 vaccine whole exercise, not only that whole process will going to tarnish the reputation of any company who wants to produce a vaccine, it will actually impact drastically the ability of a country to convince its population to get vaccinated against a coronavirus. So it has multiple angles. Because of those concerns, as a risk management strategy, it's a standard double-blind, placebo-controlled, a double-blind clinical trial study in which you have a placebo group and then you have a control group, and then things are done in a standardized format. So based on those protocols, the best they can do to ensure safety has been done. And yes, there are some companies who have reported some serious side effects that has also come into the limelight. So whenever there's a question, yes, question has been asked. So the concern of safety has been a priority, but considering this short timeline, the safety analysis has not been conducted in the way it is usually conducted, because usually we have a much longer time span, which we don't have a luxury right now. So based on that, you will say a kind of compromise has been made, but at the same time, further studies are in progress to strengthen the hypothesis and all the studies much more, and to strengthen the efficacy and safety data. So these studies of the leading candidates is in progress right now as we talk.
Well, I mean, it's nice to see that. I mean, safety is still a priority, and I mean, it's probably also makes a common sense that, you know, for the countries where public health is important to kind of, you know, find quickly the tools, because like we see that, you know, unless we control this pandemic, the consequences would be way more severe. One thing is, of course, being inside the country, but what about traveling? Like, I mean, we have seen that there are like number of, let's say, bigger international organizations, IATA, WHO, and few more, talking about corona passports or this kind of thing. Like, so what we could expect from traveling internationally in 2021 and in relation to corona?
Very, very important question. So right now, there has been this discussion that in order to control the coronavirus, as per the public health principles, those who are vaccinated, they tend to be more like they are preventing the disease, so they carry a less chance of transmitting the disease. Right now, we have seen that in the international aviation, it is happening right now that whenever you want to fly, you need to have a test that you are COVID-free, probably 24 hours, some say 48 hours before the flight. So there's already kind of a screening mechanism of COVID-19 testing as a prerequisite for flying internationally. Probably it may also happening at domestic level in some countries, yeah, but like more it's focused on internationally. So right now there has been a discussion that yes, COVID-19 testing is there, but it's not the real solution, or it's not the really strong solution. What can be a better solution? So this has been a discussion that a better solution will be if you vaccinate a population, and the person who has been vaccinated, he has a much lower chance of getting infected from corona, and he has a much lower chance of transmitting it to other people. So his transmission index is lower, and his ability to transmit the virus to the other people is also low. So because of these two factors, it has been in the discussion that vaccine passport should be there to allow international travelers. This is right now, it is raising a lot of questions, but at the moment, from public health perspective, it makes sense that yes, if you have a vaccine passport mechanism, you can most likely control, manage, reduce corona with a much more efficiency than what we are doing right now at the moment.
And in a way, it's actually like something similar has been done also in the past. Like, I mean, for example, yellow fever vaccinations. I mean, you also have to have like, vaccination passport to show, like, when you have been visiting the countries where yellow fever is still an issue. I remember some years ago when I went to Brazil, I had to get the yellow fever vaccination, and I still have the yellow passport with me. That it's basically seems like they just need an additional line in that passport to kind of say that the vaccination has been done.
Yeah, so like whatever has been done for other vaccines, there has been attempts to do that for corona or like COVID-19 vaccine as well right now. Yes, although the COVID-19 vaccine is still in a testing phase, we are yet to find out with the complete data which is the best one, which has the highest or the longest amount of efficacy. But yes, as you mentioned, this practice is already happening around the world. So a similar branch is being implemented for COVID-19. Okay. And right now, why, like we can say right now, why its significance is so important, because actually corona has disrupted almost every industry that involves movement of people from one geographical location to another. And the COVID-19 vaccine is considered more or less as a solution for economic revival strategy, not only as a public health measure, but also as a way to bring the economy back to normal status. So that's why there has been a strong push, and that's why things are happening much more fast than would it have been in a usual circumstance.
Okay, I mean, this actually like seems to be kind of challenging, and okay, I mean, let's say there are some people who are in the right countries and they do have access to vaccines, let's say in 2021. But what about all those people who, I mean, we have like 200 countries in this world. Like, what about all those people who maybe don't have an access to the vaccines in 2021 or even this year? So is there something they should do? Like something.
Very good question.
Yeah.
Okay. I had the honor of having a discussion with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation vaccination head, Dr. Anita Zaidi. I was kind of in one strategic meeting and she was there. So I got a chance to learn a lot of things from her, and she informed that right now, the rich countries who have more resources, they make significantly advanced booking for their huge proportion of population. So the rich countries, because of much higher resources, they have already got a much larger chunk of vaccines that will be produced globally. So by default, those countries who are low middle income countries or those who are not resource rich countries, they're already in a very difficult position to procure vaccine. So now, in order to solve that, what happened, there is a facility known as COVAX facility by Gavi, Global Alliance of Vaccine Immunization. And the funding comes from different organizations, including Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I think they have a standard that they qualify certain countries, the low middle income countries, almost 90 countries. And they have a huge pool of a lot of countries. The rich countries put in more money, and the low middle income countries get the vaccine on subsidized rate. So I know the government of Pakistan, a lot for the low middle income countries are applying for that. So that is one way in which by that mechanism, the country can get vaccines chunk. But it has been said that probably the vaccine supply from that platform will probably get mature in the third quarter of 2021. So right now, in a lot of countries, we have seen second wave is there and it's devastating everything, health system, economy. So what will be the situation of most of the countries till third quarter without any vaccine? That's a very hard and an important question.
And it seems to be a bit also like a geopolitical question that
it is.
I mean, considering usually like these big farmers, they probably have like, a good relationship with their respective governments, or like, the farmer groups, even let's say authorities like FDA. I mean, then I can imagine that some bigger countries might even use this vaccine as a political tool for some other smaller ones.
It is already happening. Okay, like this had become geopolitical issue at the time when the vaccine development was at the early stages, and different countries, they started to make statements that they will get the vaccine things done in probably 4 or 5 months. So we know those, especially from a science background, they know that vaccine development is a very tricky part. Geopolitics or political statements aside, technically things are not that simple. You need to have data. You need to produce efficacy. You need to like prove with evidence the safety, and you need to do everything with the support of data. Without that, it's difficult. So this has been a geopolitical issue from a very early stage. Then it becomes more intense when in August and September, a lot of developed countries started to buy or make advance payments for the vaccine, which do not have their complete trial yet, which do not have their safety efficacy, which do not have their approval yet, but companies made bookings of millions of doses in advance. So at that time, it has already started to become a geopolitical issue. And then a lot of countries, like right now, one of the developed country, they have put an embargo on one of the vaccine producers in their own country, that first our local demand will be met, then things will go outside. And a lot of countries justify it that, for them, their citizens' interest or health is the priority. So they say, yes, COVID is bad, it's impacting everyone, but our job is to save our citizens first. So there has been the geopolitical stuff happening from quite some time. Then there are some countries who have given emergency use authorization for the vaccines produced in their own country. We have an example of Russia. Some say it's China. However, other argues that China has not given emergency use authorization. They have expanded their clinical trial phase 3 arm to include more and more people. But we have seen a country, UAE, has given emergency use authorization to one of the vaccines to be vaccinated like in its region. So this whole thing has been has a very strong geopolitical impact from its beginning. And as the time matures, it becomes more and more intense. For example, right now, some people argue that, if you have a vaccine made from China, will it going to get an FDA approval on time? Many people say unlikely. Why? Because there are a lot of things happening at the geopolitical level. So yes, this has been a geopolitical issue, not just a science problem. So it's a mixture, and all of us are bearing the cost, and particularly the low-income countries are bearing the brunt of it. Why? Because in the vaccine supply chain global crisis, they are really having a really hard time in getting their hands on even a small amount of vaccine chunk, which is unfortunate, and it's happening. And right now, countries are running after pharmaceutical companies so that the pharmaceutical companies can give them vaccines. So it's more like, a scene from a movie. We have never imagined, at least I have never imagined, that this can happen in my lifetime, that, countries, not one, not 10, hundreds of countries are running after pharmaceutical companies that, please give us vaccine. So yes, there has been a lot of angles around it. Geopolitics is one of them.
I mean, it seems like, as it's let's say on a large scale, it's a game of big players. But probably among the people watching us today, many of them, they are, let's say usual people, the entrepreneurs are working in different countries across the globe. So in general, what do you would suggest people, are there any groups of people, like maybe some professions or age groups that should be more worried in order to kind of like, if the vaccine finally becomes available in their country, kind of prioritize to get it first? Or what is the alternative? Is there any alternative there that to carry on distancing, if possible, remote working, washing hands, wearing the mask? So what is our suggestion for our like audience watching us today?
Very important question. I think one of them, like we know right now that even for quite some time, it will be hard to vaccinate every person in this world. It will going to be really, really technically challenging. So what majority of the people do, or those people who do not have an access to a vaccine in the near future, first, each one of us should follow the non-pharmaceutical interventions, which means washing our hands, maintaining social distance, and try to avoid crowds, try to avoid contact with people who have corona, all those standard operating procedures we should follow. If we want to like continue where we don't have an access to vaccines. So number one is, yes, maintaining hygiene, following SOPs, and protecting your own self from corona. Number one. Number two, you need to do those activities which can help your immune system stay strong. We are still trying to understand more and more how a strong immune system can protect or prevent COVID. But as far as the trends we have observed, that among young people, they tend to have lower mortality and morbidity rate. And even some of the old fellows, if you have a strong immune system, most likely you will survive it. So this is something all of us should focus on, that, engage in those activities which help our immune system. It can be a regular exercise, it can be a better diet, it's actually a much better lifestyle. So this is what we should do. And if we don't get a vaccine, we should not be too much worried, or we should not put it on our head too much. Why? Frankly, we don't know yet that even if you get vaccinated, how strongly or how efficiently it will going to protect you. We don't know that yet. So yes, there are some limitations, and as long as we are following the non-pharmaceutical interventions and the protocols, hopefully we will survive this pandemic together, even without having our hands on the vaccine.
And I think like many of actually those non-medical interventions make even a good sense, only because of COVID-19, but, there are still like a number of other diseases where maintaining good hygiene is like a wise choice to do. Even before COVID-19 and probably even after COVID-19, that, it's not only disease in the world. And usually, like, if you're talking about infectious diseases, that's like, less contact is better. And even for the non-infectious diseases, often being a bit more active and boosting your immune system, let's say moving 10,000 steps, that's great that's a great remedy for avoiding number of, let's say, chronic diseases these days as well. That
I will add something here. If we look at the case study of Sri Lanka, it's a small country, not the most resourceful country, but a country which has a very good primary and secondary healthcare system, where hand hygiene is considered very strongly. Mm-hmm. And they are able to control COVID-19 in a remarkable way. This is something every other country should learn from. Sri Lanka, how to manage things, considering they have the chronic problem of resource constraint like many other countries, and especially in a COVID-19, even in a country like US, which have one of the highest global health security agenda index, like their health system has been devastated. So this is something we need to learn the best practices, even from those countries who are not the most resourceful. Those who have adopted the best practice and who have delivered the best results, probably we need to learn from them. One of them, the example is Sri Lanka right now. So, we need to follow SOPs. We need to follow the best cost-effective interventions, which can indirectly or even directly help us from the COVID-19.
Yeah, and that's like many of those interventions, I mean, they are available and you can do it already today. I mean, like
Exactly.
soap is available in all the countries. I mean, it's like you don't have to get those fancy, expensive alcohol-based gels or something like
Exactly.
soap. I mean, natural ingredients, it works.
And like another very interesting thing that yes, we all use different type of sanitizers. Something which probably people need to be a bit more cautious when they use alcohol-based sanitizer. They need to be a bit more careful of not going near the flame, because some of the things are like volatile, they can burn and people don't realize it. So yes, COVID-19 vaccine is very important. We use disinfectants, these are also very important, but washing hand is more important. Like this is something more safe, and somehow people tends to not consider it as much like people prefer using alcohol-based gels or hand sanitizers. Yes, they're good, they're needed. But when you have a facility to wash your hands, you should definitely go for it. Because the alcohol-based have another like offside, which many people don't know. And the flame of IPA is actually not visible in a normal light. So if there's something burning, you may not be able to see it, and that can cause another hazard. So yeah.
Well, it seems like in a nutshell, we can say that, good health is still like in everybody's hands. And like often people have those tools available around them that, you don't have to have the latest fancy high tech, but more like, like build a habit. I mean, now we have been in this for a year. Like, why not to take some grit to build like those healthy habits in 2021 at least, that you make good hygiene, because then you would be not only protected from COVID-19, but like bunch of other diseases at home and also while traveling. Like because like having a good immune system and contributing to that on a daily basis. I mean, I think it's a great investment to have.
It is.
At
any
no doubt. Group and any location you are.
Exactly. Indeed.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all this wisdom with us today. People, if you do have still questions, feel free to write us hello@nursebeam.com, or put down, if you're watching it on YouTube, you can like leave some comments. Maybe you have some more questions on this COVID-19 issue, and we are happy to do another episode in order to address the most burning questions and to bring some clarity, because like it's super complicated these days. We have like information coming from all the channels, but I think it's always good to have an expert who is like as a daily job navigating in this field to bring some insights and see, like giving some guidance what we have to do. So thank you very much, Tareq. Any last words you want to say to our audience today?
Well, first, thanks for having me. And yes, we can all fight Corona together. And vaccination and non-pharmaceutical interventions, their combination is actually the solution to move forward and fight it together. So stay strong, and you got this. And hopefully we all will survive this.
Yay! So